They called it Dead Man's Hill, a place no one dared to venture after dark. The hill stood on the outskirts of a small, forgotten town, surrounded by thick woods that seemed to whisper secrets in the night. The few who lived nearby spoke in hushed tones about the legend, a story passed down for generations, a warning to those who valued their lives. The tale was simple. Those who climbed Dead Man's Hill never returned. No one knew for certain what lurked there, but the townsfolk had their theories. Some said it was the restless spirits of the men who had died building the town's old railroad, which had been abandoned decades ago. Others believed it was something far worse, something not of this world. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the hill was cursed. It was on a cold, moonless night that a group of 4 friends, Tom, Emily, Jake, and Sarah, decided to test the legend. They were young, foolish, and skeptical of the old stories. Halloween was approaching, and they wanted a thrill, something that would set their blood racing. So, they made a pact. They would climb Dead Man's Hill and prove that the legend was nothing but an old wives' tale. Armed with nothing but flashlights and bravado, they set off toward the hill, their laughter echoing through the silent night. The path to the hill was overgrown, almost as if the earth itself was trying to protect something. As they walked, the trees seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder with each step. The closer they got to the hill, the quieter they became. The laughter died away, replaced by a sense of unease that none of them could shake. The woods were too quiet, the only sound the crunch of dead leaves beneath their feet. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. She was the most superstitious of the group, always wary of anything that hinted at the supernatural. Tom, the unofficial leader of the group, scoffed. "Come on, it's just a hill. There's nothing up there but old trees and rocks. We'll be fine." But even Tom couldn't hide the shiver that ran down his spine as they reached the base of Dead Man's Hill. It loomed above them, a dark silhouette against the starless sky. The wind picked up, howling through the trees like a chorus of tortured souls. Determined not to back down, Tom led the way, starting the climb up the steep, uneven path. The others followed, their flashlights flickering as if the darkness itself was trying to snuff out the light. As they ascended, the air grew colder, the wind more biting. The path became narrower, the trees thicker. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the hill and the oppressive darkness that clung to it. They didn't speak, the silence heavy and suffocating. Their only comfort was the sight of each other's flashlights bobbing ahead in the darkness. It wasn't long before strange things began to happen. Emily was the first to notice. She stopped suddenly, her flashlight shaking in her hand. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The others paused, straining to listen. At first, there was nothing but the sound of the wind and their own breathing, but then they heard it, a faint, rhythmic sound like the pounding of drums echoing through the trees. "What the hell is that?" Jake muttered, his voice tight with unease. Tom tried to brush it off. Probably just the wind. But they all knew it wasn't the wind. The sound grew louder as they climbed higher, the rhythm increasing until it matched the frantic beating of their hearts. And then, the whispers started. At first, they were so soft that they could have been mistaken for the rustling of leaves. But as they climbed, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. Voices, dozens of them speaking in a language none of them understood. Sarah clutched Jake's arm, her knuckles white. "This isn't right. We should go back." But Tom was already too far ahead, his stubbornness driving him onward. "We're almost there," he called back, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Don't be scared." The others reluctantly followed, the whispers growing louder with each step. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, their breath visible in the flashlight beams. Finally, they reached the summit of Dead Man's Hill. The ground leveled out, the trees parting to reveal a small, barren clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an old, twisted tree, its branches bare and gnarled like the fingers of a corpse. But it wasn't the tree that held their attention. In front of the tree, half buried in the earth, was a large moss-covered stone. The stone was weathered and cracked, but they could make out strange symbols carved into its surface, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light. "That's it?" Tom said, trying to sound unimpressed, but his voice betrayed him. "Just an old rock?" But none of them were looking at the stone. Their eyes were fixed on the ground around it, on the dozens of fresh graves that surrounded the tree. "What the—" Emily began, but her words were cut off by a sudden, bone-chilling scream. The scream came from behind them, from the direction they had come. It was a sound of pure terror, of unimaginable pain, and it was getting closer. Panic set in. They turned to run, but the path was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The trees closed in around them, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The whispers grew louder, drowning out their frantic shouts. The drums pounded in their ears, a deafening cacophony that made their heads throb. And then they saw them, the figures emerging from the trees, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were men, or had been once, but their bodies were twisted, their faces contorted in agony. They moved with jerky, unnatural movements, as if pulled by invisible strings. The friends huddled together, their backs to the twisted tree, the stone at their feet. The figures surrounded them, their whispers turning to guttural growls. "We need to get out of here," Jake yelled, but there was nowhere to go. The figures closed in, their hands outstretched, their mouths opening to reveal rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Emily screamed, but the sound was lost in the din. The figures lunged at them, their hands cold and clammy, their grip like iron. The friends fought back, but it was useless. The figures were too strong, their numbers overwhelming. One by one they were dragged to the ground, their screams echoing through the night. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The clearing was silent once more, the figures gone, leaving nothing but the twisted tree and the stone. The next morning, the townsfolk found the bodies. They were sprawled at the base of Dead Man's Hill, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. The authorities could find no cause of death, no signs of foul play. It was as if they had simply died of fright. The town buried the bodies and added their names to the long list of those who had fallen victim to the hill's curse. But the legend only grew stronger. The story passed down to new generations as a warning. Dead Man's Hill remained a place of fear, a place where the dead walked and the living feared to tread. And the stone, with its shifting symbols and the graves that surrounded it, remained untouched, a silent testament to the horrors that awaited those who dared to climb the hill. The legend of Dead Man's Hill lived on, a story whispered in the dark, a tale of terror that would never be forgotten. And so the hill waits, watching, listening, for the next group of fools who would challenge the curse. Because in the end, the hill always wins. The story of Dead Man's Hill is a chilling reminder that some places are best left alone. The legend is not just a tale to scare children, but a warning, one that should be heeded by all who value their lives. For the hill does not forget and it does not forgive. Those who climb it become part of the legend, part of the curse. And in the end, they are forgotten. Just like the ones who came before them, the hill waits. The legend lives on, and the dead are never truly gone.